Let's start out with a little fun fact trivia about cell phones. Were you all aware that the world population is over 6 billion people? What you may not be aware is that the cell phones in a worldwide total also reached over 6 billion. So what that means is that for every person in the world, each one of them has a cell phone. Now it doesn't mean that it's always active, but there's that many out there in the world today. With having so many cell phones so readily accessible, how many of us are guilty using them while we're driving in a car? I know I have, I know my wife has, and I know millions of people around the world constantly on a daily basis, when they're driving, will use their cell phones in one form or another. Whether they're texting, whether they're calling, whether they're playing games, checking emails, all of us look at it at some point while we're in the car. So today we're going to talk about some of the dangers of using your cell phone while you're in the car, and solutions to help you stop, as a reminder daily of what you need to do to not get in an accident. So, as you all know, there are about 6 billion people in the world using cell phones. The United States and China are the leading number of cell phones in the world. China has close to 1 billion people right now who have cell phone access, and in America that number is slightly smaller at 327 million. So almost 1/3 of the entire population of the world is that has cell phones is done through China and the United States, according to Chacha.com statistics as of 2010. With cell phones, every day there's up to 1,000 new subscribers every second. So if you think of that, every second 1,000 people obtain a new cell phone contract in the world. So if you imagine how many people are out there who use the phones, everybody's got to drive to work, got to drive to school, got to drive somewhere. Everybody's going to be on their phone while they're in the car. According to some other statistics on ehow.com, they did a survey of 1,000 people, and 73% of them actually admitted to using their phone at one point in time during the car. So the other 27 people, I think they're lying. So that's just my personal opinion, because there's no way, as much time as you spend in your car, that you're not on your phone, either in some form, like I said, checking your voicemail, being on your text messaging, being on video games, and so forth. So, according to another statistic from ehow.com, that if you are texting, you have a 23% higher chance of getting into a wreck. And the reason this is because you're distracted. By being distracted, obviously you're not paying attention to the road, you're not paying attention to what you're doing, you put yourself in harm's way, you also put everybody in the car with you in harm's way. And if you are distracted, they say for every 5 seconds that you're on your phone making a text message, checking a voicemail, checking for directions, using your GPS, that you are distracted for almost 100 yards on the highway. So if you imagine you're in your car driving along, for 5 seconds of looking at your phone, you can go in almost an entire length of a football field without paying attention. And think about what all happens on the road, especially the highways, with the number of accidents that happen every year. I mean, you can be not texting and get in an accident, but just imagine if you're not paying attention and you get in an accident, or somebody else is not paying attention and you get in an accident. You know, how frustrating is it if you get in a wreck and they say, oh, I was on my cell phone, I apologize. There's no excuse for that. So there are some tips to avoid getting into an accident from being on your cell phone. Obviously, one of the most popular choices is you pull over. Nobody likes to do that because everybody's in a hurry. But if you stop alongside the road away from traffic, somebody calls, you have to take an important call, especially if you're mad, you're having an angry conversation. It's not going to clear itself up in a few minutes. So it is wise to pull over to the side of the road, finish your conversation, hang up, and go about your way. Safe way is always better. Second tip is if you have passengers in the car and you do need to talk, or you do need to have that text message that you absolutely need to send, have them do it. It's not that hard. Speakerphone, obviously, is another alternative choice, but it's not as safe still because you are distracted, because you are physically talking to somebody. You always want to look at the phone, even though it's on hands-free, you're still talking, your mind's still working, and not paying attention to the road. So that is an alternative, but it's not necessarily a wise alternative. And those advice come from slate.com. They have a bunch of different varieties of suggestions. Another alternative doesn't really work in the smaller towns or some of your smaller cities is to take public transportation. You know, if you get on a bus, get on a train, you take a cab, you're not driving, you're not responsible. So you can text, check your voicemail, play your games, you can do all that, you know, in the comfort of somebody else driving. But more than likely, one of those people has been guilty of doing it as well. So you always got to take a risk, but hopefully the reward pays out in the end. So with the number of cell phones being out there, the number of drivers, you know, out on the road, 73% of them already admitted that they're on their phones. So what you need to do is just recognize that there is a danger when you're on your phone. You can be distracted very easily, and you don't want to risk, you know, getting into a car accident because, you know, somebody texts you something silly.